Well, hello, hello, hello. Happy Saturday, y'all. It's your girl Lorna, and welcome to the Success Code Fireside Chats. I am super excited to be here with you. And first of all, let me just say, last week we had a debunk. We did not have the show last week because I had my first live event, which was amazing. So I was in the room still talking at 10 o'clock. I just wasn't with you, right? So my apologies for that. And today is the day after the 4th of July, where we celebrated our freedom. And I believe that we should be celebrating freedom every day. The fact that we're above ground and breathing, that's freedom, right? So I hope you are celebrating yourself, celebrating your family, and all the things that you enjoy at a time as this every year. So today, I want to invite you again to the Success Code Fireside Chats, where conscious leadership meets business and real talk, and more real talk than anything else. Which is why I'm super excited to have my guest here today, Robert Butwin. I met Robert. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Since last year. Oh, okay. It's not a recent meet. I've met Robert since last year. And Robert is a serial entrepreneur. And most of all, he is a conscious leadership business strategist. And even bigger than that, he's one of the most connected individuals I know. When I got introduced to Robert, I was told he knows everybody. But you know how when people introduce you to people and they say they know everybody, and you were like, huh? Well, no. This is the guy who is connected in every way, and not just connected to introduce you to people. He actually does the follow up, y'all. So before further ado, I want to introduce and bring to the stage Robert Butwin. And Robert, I want you to share a little bit more about yourself with the audience, and then we'll jump into the conversation.
Sounds good. Do you see me on stage, first of all?
Yes, I can. You're doing great.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, I'm used to Zoom. I've been on StreamYard a few times, but it's always a pleasure to be in your presence. And I'm
Thank
looking
you.
forward to sharing some real talk based on whatever questions that you ask me.
Absolutely. And Robert, we're gonna have a conversation. So I'm gonna ask you questions, and we're gonna dive deep into it, right? So tell them a little bit more about you before we jump in.
You know, my journey started about 50 years ago. And anybody that plunges into the entrepreneurial journey, they're going to have their trials and tribulations.
Mhm.
And things didn't always work out exactly the way I wanted to, but I learned. And we all have certain lessons we learned. I had this somewhat of a vision of what I wanted to accomplish. It's like my crystal ball was clear, but it wasn't necessarily crystal clear.
Mhm.
But as far as where I am right now, it's exactly where I want to be.
Mm.
I've been blessed. I've been happily married to an amazing lady for 40 years. That was my first real partner. We all get born, we all are born into a family.
Mhm.
And, there's certain dysfunctionalities in many people's families, including mine. But, everything that happens, there's some kind of a lesson that the world or you're supposed to learn on that journey. So
Mhm.
part of what I'm now, it's like with my wife, we play pickleball. We've got a pickleball court in our backyard, so we play pickleball like almost every night. We
I
go on a
love
walk.
that.
Yeah, yeah, we go on a walk together, and we're enjoying life. I don't have to have. I've got zero money worries. I've made a lot of money. I've, in certain areas. I made some mistakes, but I stay focused on living that life of meaning based on showing up and helping people.
Nice, nice, nice. I love that. Before I ask you my first question, can you share with the audience like what businesses have you delved into along your journey, your 50-year journey?
Sure. I started off in our family business. They created the high school award cheerleading jacket business. always expected to end running that business. We also made some of the police jackets, airline jackets. Actually, I designed a jacket that's still a very popular jacket today because at the time, and many of our competitors copied it, we had this circle. Well, growing up, when I started entering the family business, I was like 18, 19, 20 years old, and I like to play sports. And so after you got done playing sports, you'd go out and hang out at the bar with friends. So I wanted something that was more hip, so to speak, at the time. So I created that. But the problem was there was too much family in the family business. They weren't willing to make the necessary changes. Somehow, however I got programmed, I've always looked at myself as a rainmaker. So I came to the realization because there was one year that I was covering the Twin Cities. I mean, I didn't start off in sales. I started off in purchasing, went into production engineering, got into sales and marketing and merchandising, and I increased sales over $500,000 in the area, the Twin Cities where I was. They gave me a $5,000 a year raise. My grandmother wanted to make sure all her grandchildren were making approximately the same amount of money. And so me, there was something wrong. And I realized I saw the handwriting on the wall. So I'm trying to figure out how to get out of our family business. And I ended up running a nightclub with no experience. And it was
Wow.
yeah. And that was a whole nother thing. The owner had just sabotaged the club. It was really decked out in the right, very nicely. It was back in the day of the disco.
Mhm.
And ultimately, I brought it up to the number one nightclub. And without
Wow.
knowing, yeah. In fact, Morris Day played in the private room in the club. It was called the OZ. And I didn't realize they were wanting to sell the club. If I would have known that, I would have gotten the resource and bought the club because I really enjoyed it. And based on the situation, it was a blessing in disguise because shortly thereafter, I ended up meeting the lady that I ended up marrying. I would have never met her if I would have stayed in the nightclub business. And that
Wow.
has been a blessing in my whole life because then I got into entrepreneurship. And my first endeavor in entrepreneurship, I, it was not a success. In the first 6 months, I created $102,000 in debt, 40 different um, credit cards or places I owe, money to. And the only reason I know this is the lady that I mentioned to you, who I'm now married to, was falling in love with me, and she wanted to know where I was financially. So she helped me get through that. So she wanted to take a look at all the debt. She's very one of these systematic ladies, and so she charts everything. And I mean, she was exactly what I needed
Yeah.
as I went through this journey.
That's so powerful. Oh my gosh. Warren Buffett says the same thing about whenever anybody asks him what's the biggest business advice that he could give them, he always says, marry the right woman. so, so you married the right woman. That's amazing. Oh my gosh. Now I see, and I did not know about the nightclub. So now I'm making the connection about how you've become this amazing connector, because it sounds to me, and I'm sure we're going to get into it, that was part of your secret sauce to becoming this amazing networker in the entrepreneurial world. So Robert, let me ask you a quick question about success, because that's one of the questions I love to ask all the guests who come on here, because I believe that success is relative, right? And I could hear success in your world, but I want you to tell the audience in your own words what is your definition of success?
It's the worthy journey towards it's a journey towards a worthy goal. To me, it's where I'm living now. I'll never stop working. If somebody would ask me, do I look at myself as success? Yes, I feel I'm very successful. Now, one time I came off stage and somebody asked me, was it easy? And I didn't have to think to answer. I said, no, it's not easy, but it's worth it.
Mm,
Everything on our journey, we're all going to have different situations that come up. And one of the things that I tell people is I'm able to mentor people today at no cost. I said, part of the things that you go through, the reason they are going through the things that you go through is as you break through whatever you've got to break through, you're going to be able to look them in the eyes, speak from the heart, and be able to empathize with them and let them know you went through something similar, and however that was similar but
Mhm,
different, and giving
mhm,
them hope, the fact that they can get through the challenges that they're getting through. In fact, there's a gentleman I know that I want to introduce you to. He happens to live in Dallas. He's, I just had a conversation with him yesterday on the 4th of July, and he was trying to figure out how he was a couple like $300 short. And he creates websites of paying this month's rent. Now, in my heart of hearts, I really wanted to help him. But one of the things I learned that everybody's got to deal with whatever challenges they've got to deal with. It's sort of like if the chicken trying to break out of the egg. If you help it break out of the egg, it's going to be weaker. We
mhm,
all have those challenges. I had those challenges, but figured out how to get through them, and
mhm,
it made me a stronger person.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, that's a powerful way of looking at it. You know, and I'm by the way, I'm so intrigued that you did not talk say so far you haven't said anything about money so in our conversation, and this is very interesting to me because normally when you ask people what does success mean to them, they tell you something that's related to cash, to money. So that's interesting that for what I heard you say is for success for you is how many people you get to support, how many people do you get to help into their greatness, how many people do, and not help meaning giving them anything, but supporting them to figure out their own strength so that it can move through situations that come up in their lives, right?
Yep.
And I love that. I love that. It it's very interesting. Very. We're gonna have another conversation around that. So let's jump into the conversations because one of the things that I admire about you is that you're able to build these mutually beneficial relationships that turn into long lasting opportunities and friendships. Like for me, one of the things that I've noticed, especially with the people you've introduced me to, um, all of them say the same thing. I've known Robert for 30 years. There's nobody you've introduced me to that has said, "Oh, I just met Robert last week." No. Most of the people that you've introduced me to have said that they've known you for a long time. How do you sustain these relationships? And second question to that is, what are most people getting wrong when they're networking?
Well, the key to sustaining, number one, listening, being of value, always,
Mhm,
having the other person's best interest at heart. You know, and part of it is there's a lot of people pleasers, and you have to understand your boundaries, whatever they are.
mhm,
I'll give, and ultimately, I believe in reciprocity, and I don't keep a scorecard by any means. But
mhm,
the point is, you've got to be authentic. I know I'm really authentic. One of the things I learned from my grandfather, and I really don't remember, but I heard many people say, if you always tell the truth, you never have to remember what you said. So if you're authentic, no, now back when I was growing up, I didn't understand it as much as I understand it today.
yeah.
But I don't want to have to think. I want to stay focused. You know, and you talk about money, and let me, when I started off, I had money goals, but that changed. I was in a meeting with a guy, and somebody asked the question, "What's the meaning of life?" And the person said, "To live a life of meaning," or that's how I took it. And the money, I've accomplished it. I'm very happy with where I am financially, but I'm never going to stop working, because if my purpose in life is to live a life of meaning, then ultimately it's focused on being of value to people, showing up and being authentic. Now, the biggest mistake that people make in networking, number one, and you're a perfect example of the antithesis of this because you do it right. You've created your brand, but most people are talking about a brand that they represent. Number one. Number two is they're too focused on just getting clients. They've forgotten the most important part: collaborations. Early
Mm,
on, when I started networking, I heard the saying, and I believe it, that there's a direct relationship to the value of your net worth and the value of your net work. So when March of 2020 happened and everything changed, and yes, I've got a lot of these 30-year relationships. One of them, a couple of them that jump out, Tony Polici, who is Joe Polish's older brother, for those of you that understand, Marky is Dean Graciosa's, he's a very close friend. He's, 30 plus years. I've got a lot of the long term, but when March of 2020 happened, everything went to more online. I met you online.
mhm.
And some of the key relationships that I've developed, and I could give you a long list of them. Jim Feldman, he's helped some very large companies increase sales 3 billion. Tom Gay, he's helped 4 companies. Part of the key is understanding what you're really looking for. I wanted to surround myself with successful people, the rainmakers, people that are making a positive impact. You got Tom Gay, you got Dave Ricklin and Mark Porteous, Eric Zuley. I've got Jason McNamara. I could Diane Armitage, who I introduced you to, Scott Schilling, who I introduced you to. I look for people that are authentic, that have got some value, and that really care about people. So again, it's developing the right collaborations in the right way with the right people. Now, there's, one of the guys I originally met, Jay Fassetti, says upstream, downstream, and resources people you can guide people to. The people that you want, the people that are smarter or have got different things that are that they've got strengths that might be your weaknesses, like Tom Gay
Mhm.
and So those are some of the people that I wanted to develop a relationship because when March of 2020 happened, somebody mentioned the book, The Big Leap. And it talks about staying in your state of genius. My state of genius is networking and having meaningful, conscious conversations.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I love that. I love that. And I'm the same way. I guess that's how we got attracted to each other in some way, shape, or form. The universe is like, okay, Zoom, right? And with, I didn't understand. I heard the word collaboration, and I've been doing it, especially in my real estate life.
right,
That's all I do is collaboration, right? Like my inspectors, my attorneys, right? My mortgage lenders, that's all collaboration, but I didn't hold it like that until I came into the transformation, leadership, online entrepreneurial world, right?
right,
Um, and now when I hear collaboration, I get it. I get what it's all about. However, I still think that some of the entrepreneurs out there in the online space, in the coaching space, in the speaking space, I think going back to what you said earlier about how people are so focused on getting clients, they're forgetting certain steps that get to still occur in the process. And one of them is collaboration. But I think that it's because the word collaboration is misinterpreted. Uh, they'll and I've done it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not speaking from a Eiffel Tower over here. I've gone into some relationships in quote unquote collaboration without distinctive expectations in the collaborative partnership, and that has not panned out. But I only had to do it once. I only had to do it once to see it, and now I don't do that anymore. So with that said, um, what is your definition of collaboration? Like when I say definition, how does collaboration look like in your world?
I go into everyone open minded. It's always got to be win, win, win.
Yeah.
I'll start out by giving, and it's
Yes.
sort of like the analogy, and hopefully you understand enough about football that you'll catch this analogy. But if you're the quarterback of your team, and I love the acronym of the team, which is together everybody achieves mastery. But if you're the quarterback, there's four ways to advance the ball. You can either draw the other people offside. You can, when the ball gets hiked to you, you can run it. You can give it to one of the running back who will carry it
Hmm.
for you, or you can drop back and pass it. Those are the four ways. So, every collaboration is unique and different.
Yeah.
But the beginning part, from what the way I do it is I start off by giving. You have to
Hmm.
understand the boundaries. You communicate the boundaries. What are your expectations? I don't keep score because I know the value that I can offer. The key that I've learned, and I really go into every conversation, every relationship with the fact that I know that I can be of value to the other person. I'm going to
Hmm.
do things to help the other person, but if you have your boundaries and you make sure that the people understand your boundaries, not necessarily at the beginning stage, but
Hmm.
at some point towards the beginning stage, that they understand your boundaries so that you're on the same team, so that you're focused on making a positive impact. You want to make sure that you are associated with the right people. One of the quotes in my book, that your income is in the um, your income is in the average income of your 5 or 10 closest friends. Many people have said that quote, and I believe it to be the truth. So you want to make sure that you're either associating with people of high caliber. Their income might not be, but at least they're going in a similar direction. They want to have a positive impact, and that they're
Hmm.
not just takers. And there's a lot of takers in the world.
Oh my gosh, you have no idea. Oh yeah, you do. You're older than me. Oh my gosh, you listen. That is again, until I got into this online space, when somebody said the word taker, I was like, what are you talking about? Because I don't roll like that, right? So when somebody says taker, I'm like, that means I'm taking something, not seeing the other side of it, which is the given, right? And then associating that consciousness with the idea that first give, the scripture says it's blessed, it's better to be a giver than it's best, right? It's best to be a giver than a receiver. So my couple of months experience in that arena has been really amplified to really show me like what that really means. So if you're listening to this and you're saying, okay, am I a taker, better ask yourself the question as you're getting into these relationships, as you're networking, because I go into so many rooms, so many networking rooms, that and I see it everywhere, about how people are just takers and they're not even conscious of the idea that they're taking, right? They're
Yeah.
totally unconscious of taking. um and I hope that that lands for people when they hear this replay, because that's a super important point.
Yeah.
So because we're in the online space, Robert, um how do you stand out among the noise in this whole thing of because there's so many moving parts, right? You
Yeah.
got to be a giver, you got to be authentic, you got to add value, all the things. How do you manage all of that to be cohesive enough to build the relationship?
It goes back to what you started off mentioning when you're in these online groups. One of the biggest mistakes that people are doing is they're just trying to pitch what they're doing. They're missing the boat. You want to pitch the one on one. That's where you start to really get to know somebody. When I do a one on one thing, I give the analogy. It's sort of like dating. Why go on a date to see if you want a second date? So basically, what I do, and there's so many different things. It's like when March of 2020 happened, I realized that everybody was shifting online. So I created a resource list of a lot of online, you know, networking groups that people could join for very little or free. And so that was one way of giving.
Right.
Today, there's other ways to give, and without being manipulative, but also being strategic. When you're having the one-on-ones, you can ask somebody, one of the questions is, was there one key book that you read or one key speaker that you listened to that had a profound impact? Now with AI out there, if it's a book, if you're not a fast reader, you can go to AI and you can ask it to give you the main key points of the book. And number one, you're finding out what was relevant to somebody else, but then it gives you a way to get back to the person authentically and say, I'm glad you suggested that book. There's a couple points that were instrumental for me. So I mean, there's many different ways that you can give. And the key in everything in marketing is everything's a test.
Mm.
You're testing somebody, you're showing up, giving up authentically up front as it relates to what's going on in their world. Part of the key in giving, and this is one of the things I learned from Jim Feldman, and every time I have a conversation with him, I learned something, but he taught me 3D thinking. See, everybody's in their box, whatever their box is. So I've got to get in the box with them and understand the 3Ds. And so how do you do it? You ask questions. You want to understand what's the depth of what's going on in their world. Is it a mindset program? Now, could I handle that? But the answer is of course. But I'd rather pass it off to somebody else. I want to stay in my state of genius. I'd rather feed somebody else that I believe in. So understand the depth. Are they doing enough activities? Are they doing enough networking? What is going on in their world? Are they looking to get visibility, credibility, connectivity? Do they have a book? What's going on in their world, one way or the other? The XD is the distance from where they are to where they want to be. So I want to understand that, be it income, whatever it might be. And the last is determination. Are they really determined? I'll use a word. There's a lot of wannapreneurs out there. They say they want all the glory of what comes with being a successful person, but they're not willing to do the activities. One of the things that Jim Rohn used to say, only 3% of the population has a library card. How much does a library card cost?
Isn't it free?
Yeah, they are free. The point is, today, I know how much money I spent on personal growth. Today, you can go to YouTube and look at Jim Rohn, Take Charge of Your Life, or Wayne Dyer, or Dr. Robert Anthony, or any Zig Ziglar, whatever it is. You can get it for free. Tony Robbins. There's a lot out there for free. But, if I guide somebody, in the first conversation, and then if I have another conversation and they don't do anything of what you said, what's that showing you? They're just a entrepreneur. They're not determined to create the success that they say they're wanting to create for themselves. Because today, and I've said this from stage many times, it's easier to become wealthy or create whatever you want to create than any other time with the technology, AI, and everything else, and the quality of people that you can make and meet online.
Yeah. And the amount of people, because I do both, right? And it's the law of numbers is what I see, right? Because last week I went to a networking event. There were, let's say, not even last week. I can't even do, what's today? Today's Saturday, right? Wednesday, I went to a networking event. There were only 16 people. Not only, there were 16 people on at the event in person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yet when I go on a networking event like with JV Directory, there could be 100 people in the Zoom.
Yep.
So there's so much more available in terms of how you can scale your networking activities. So you're right. I love the 3Ds, the depth, the determination, and the distance from where they are to where they want to go. Those are three really super important foundational things, right? But
Sure.
that's such a great way to have a conversation with people, as opposed to just vomiting on y'all, it's real talk, as opposed to vomiting on people. Listen, I got, Robert, one of my pet peeves in these networking one-on-ones is when they come in and you ask them these poignant questions and they just start vomiting everything that they do, as opposed to sharing who they are in the conversation. It's but it's training, right? It's training and it's practice. So just hearing you say that kind of like just solidifies the idea for me that I get to ask different questions so that they come from a different space to share this stuff, the 3Ds with me, so I can support them better, you know? Um, so let me ask you, what's one connection for you that changed everything in your life, and how did you learn from it?
Well, the first one, well, besides my wife, the next key connection was a guy named Robert Nadiak. He was where I wanted to be in life. And
Mm,
one of the key things that he taught me was attitude of gratitude. You've got to
mm,
be grateful for where you are as you're going to where you deserve to be.
yeah.
So
Ooh, you just said deserve. Wow. Why did you say that?
I'm what? Why did I what?
You said you gotta have an attitude of gratitude on the way to where you deserve to be.
That's correct.
So
One of the things I've said a long time, it doesn't matter where you start in life or where you are now. None of that matters. Here's
yeah.
the two things that matter: the direction you're headed, and if you're headed in the wrong direction, you can change. But
Mhm.
the bigger thing that really matters is where you choose to end up. Life's short. You know, again, the reason I don't charge ever is because I want to live a life of meaning and I want to see more people reach beyond where they are. Most people, unfortunately, settle and they become
Mm,
complacent. And I've got a great acronym that I think your audience will appreciate if they really want to reach the next level in their life. And the R is your reputation.
mhm,
You know, I'm, it goes back almost every time, and I'm hearing it over and over and over again. People say, "Well, everybody likes Robert." Well, I'm not trying to be likable. I'm just trying to be authentic. So the R is your reputation. The E is the experience they have when they're with you.
mhm,
My experience is always focused on to be of value to the other person. So, A, are you an authentic authority? Now, you can position yourself however you want to position it. Just make sure you're congruent. The
mhm,
things what you do, and that's one of the areas where I see a lot of people sabotage the success that they could have. So, anyhow, authentic authority. C, clarity in your communication. A bunch of C's and certainty.
mhm,
People are looking for some sort of clarity. There's a lot of confusion in the marketplace, especially with the way media spins it. So
mhm,
we can help people get more clear in what they're looking to accomplish. Clarity in communication and certainty. You know,
mhm,
and they've got to be determined. And so the H is, were you helpful? And did you give them hope? And hope is helping other people elevate by empowering them, meaning guiding them to the information. One of the things I talked about in my book, you want to create interdependent, not codependent relationships, but you want to test people to make sure that they're congruent with what they say and what they really want to accomplish.
yeah, and the commitment too, right? Another C, right? The
Yeah,
commitment is I know you probably use the word D, but I'm using C. Commitment is so super important. All the things you just shared, by the way, Robert, were stuff that I taught in my 3-day event last weekend.
good.
Clarity, communication, again, fundamental stuff, right, that we overlook because we're so focused on the dollar sign instead of the steps to get to where you want to go, right? It's like it's a process that I've learned. It's a process, and if you're not willing to walk through the process and the pain of the process, Because believe you me, the pain is coming. That's a good question. What's the most painful business experience you've ever walked through, Robert?
There's many of them.
The most painful though. The most.
Well, the most painful is people that you really think you trust and they let you
Mm,
down the way. And I'm talking about financially. And I mean, I won't name names, but I mean, I'm one person I met who ended up being the biggest con. I watched him con a variety of different people. I saw it early on, but he conned a lot of people for approximately $2 million of, 7 different direct marketing companies. I saw another person that I really believed in, that I thought was a partner. I loaned him a bunch of money. I'm finally, whatever a period of time, getting it paid back. I mean, I could go on and on and on about situations where people left me down. But there's a saying: a person's character is like a tea bag. You never know what's inside of it until it gets into hot water. And so, again, the the more that you have these different experiences, and I love the definition of experience. Experience is what you get when you don't get what you want. The more that you have these different experiences, it creates the wisdom, and you want
mhm.
to recognize the lessons that you learn, because life will continually trip you on the lesson until you learn the lesson, whatever it
Until you
is.
learn the lesson. Yep, yep, yep. Absolutely. That's for sure. That is for sure. So um thanks for sharing all that, because I think that a lot of entrepreneurs think that everybody that they get into business with is going to be the right person, and I still, I'm vulnerable when it comes to that. I trust that people are going to do what they say they're going to do. um but sometimes you don't get that result, and it's a hard lesson, but it's a lesson that you keep, like you said, you keep getting that experience until you learn the lesson. So here's my next question for you, Robert. What, by the way, did you tell me what was the biggest, what did you learn from it? What did you learn from all those experiences? What was the biggest lesson for you? Is it the trust factor or?
The biggest lesson is don't allow money to come between friendships.
uh,
I've learned that banks loan money. I mean, because of the success, and I am financially successful, I get
mhm.
people coming to me more than I'd like to have it, wanting either for me to give them money, grant, loan them money, whatever the case is. And, people need to figure out how to get through the different challenges, whatever those challenges are. I'm happy to share my insight and wisdom, and I'm not charging. And the reason I never charge is, and I'm an anomaly in that area, is I don't want to be working for somebody else personally. I don't mind sharing insights, but it's understanding your boundaries so that people are not taking advantage of your graciousness one way or the other.
Yeah, and I want to add to that, Robert, and making sure that you are not, I can't hear another word, harboring any resentment towards sharing the knowledge, right? Because you're not getting paid. Because there's such a law as a law of fair exchange. You're getting paid in some other way, but
Yeah.
within your psyche, right? But I want people to hear that, because some people may think, listen to that and say, well, I'm not going to share the information because they're not paying me, right? But you're getting paid in another form of currency that's suitable for you, is what I'm hearing, right?
That's
So
part of it, and I agree. Yes, I get the value of knowing that I was helping another human being, but part of
yes.
the law of attraction, the
Hmm.
actions that you're doing, and if you continually put that kind of information out, that feeds into the hour of reach. It's going to create your reputation. And I get multiple referrals because
Yeah.
I position myself as a VA. I said this to you: a value add, not a virtual assistant. I
Oh Lord, sorry, but that was funny. Value add, not virtual assistant. Go ahead.
Well, I'm part of other people's teams. There's
Yes.
multiple different ways, to get across the river, so to speak, to get
Yeah.
from where you are to where you want to be.
Yeah.
It's not. one size fits all. And so
Yes.
yeah, so if I'm continually showing up and focus on being of value, um, people like referring me, opening doors for me. I think it was Rob
Absolutely.
said, I'd rather have 1% of 100 people's efforts than 100% of my own. If other people are opening the doors for me, I don't have to go out and figure out how to find the right people. They're coming to me.
Yeah. I love that because you just jumped, you went right into my next question without even, you can't make this stuff up. Because the next question I was going to ask you is what's one common mistake that you see people, entrepreneurs making when they're trying to get into the right room with high level people? That was my next question. And what you just said kind of answered it. But if you want to add some more to that, what's the
Well,
one? Mhm.
it's understanding to me, and what Tom Gay said, relationship currency is more important than cash. With the right person, the more I give, the more it's going to come back. I think it was BNI, even though I was never a member of BNI, used to say giver's gain. Or
Yep.
Bob Burr, a friend of mine, um, even though we're not really close, but his ghostwriter is my ghostwriter in the book Go Giver. I
Yep.
believe the more you give, it comes back to you. And
Yeah.
another book that I highly recommend for people that want to up their networking game by Harvey McCade, Dig You Well Before You're
Yeah.
Thirsty. If you buy into the fact that your net worth is in direct relationship to the value of the network, and it's an art of networking, and the more that you do it, and the more that you refine that what you do, the better you're gonna get without a doubt. So, again, I think it was Ben Sweetland said, "Success is a journey, not the destination." You've got to continually do the groundwork consistently. The key to success is TTP, talk to people. And if you're not getting it, talk to more people, because and refine what you're doing, and just know that if you consistently do it, and there's another saying, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. The more that you do it, the more the right people will show up.
Yeah. Yeah. So what is the best way? Because, or let me rephrase that question. How do you determine what rooms to get into?
That's a
Because
simple
not every
question.
room is, it's like not all money is good money. Not every room is good room, right?
You're right. I mean, there's a variety of different parameters that I look at. I mean, since the majority of the people that I'm interested in, and if you haven't figured out, I love acronyms, are what I call CASH: coaches, authors, speakers, and holistic minded entrepreneurs. I'm looking to meet people that are serious and committed to taking their business to the next level, knowing I can help them, and I'm looking for the collaboration. So some of the best rooms and my favorite rooms are the JV Directory, Event Raptors, which is for speakers that are either looking to get on stages or on stages, Gem Networking, places where the right audience will hang out, Podcasters Directory. And usually, if those are some of them, the other ones, when the room host, because I've got relationships with them, will um, how do I say, edify me, acknowledge me, places where you're getting, the right visibility, or other
Mhm.
why to show up at rooms, but you're really looking for the right audience. Another one that I like, in part of my parameters of what's the right room, there's one of the ladies I met through networking. She does a speed networking I think it's every Tuesday, Wednesday, holiday, and she's getting about 85 to 100 people. Well, I go to rooms where I've got the highest probability, because I know when I get into rooms, and part of the key in getting into the rooms is knowing your numbers.
Number
I'm,
eight.
yeah, my numbers I do because I'm a serious networker, not because I need to, but it's what I love to do. It's my life purpose. I do about 45 hours of networking a month, and that nets me 80.
Whoa.
Yeah, and that nets me 80 one-on-ones, through referrals or networking. And some people say, God, those numbers are astronomical. But if you really think about it,
That's really,
there's
yeah.
there's 170-hour working hours if you're working a 40-hour work week. So, with what I just broke down, that's only like 70 hours, 80 hours. That's not even a 50% of a work week. The balance it, because part of the key is living a life of balance. making sure, I spend time with my wife every single day. I've got downtime. To me, work doesn't feel like work because it's a passion of love in what I love
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. I love that. But you just opened up on my brain to the networking numbers. I do numbers, but I don't do networking numbers. So that's like when I coached with Suzanne Evans. One of
Yep.
the things she told us going in, she's like, "You want $1 million? 48 stages, right? So 48 stages to $1 million." So that's in my head. So whenever you see me, so people are saying, "Oh, Lorna, you're everywhere." Yeah, I gotta get on the stage. It's called visibility. So Suzanne put that in my head. But I love the way you just broke it down for networking. That is gold, y'all. So hope you're watching this and taking notes because Robert's dropping a lot of good stuff here. And would you believe that we only have 8 more minutes? We only have 8 more minutes. Okay, so um, what's the one thing you want to leave the audience with that you think will absolutely, if they're a coach, they're a speaker, they're a business owner, they're an online person, e-commerce, whatever, that what's the one thing that you want to leave with them that will shift their business if they hear it and take the action?
The one thing, and it starts off when I was dating my wife, when I was dating the lady that became my wife. We were walking across from her house, and I turned to her and I said, "There's nothing or nobody that's going to stop me from being success, whatever success means to you. What is your intention?" There's many different ways that you can create success that you're looking for. So if you understand whatever methodology that you choose, and I believe in multiple streams of income, and that's a whole nother piece of it, because let me share with you, I mean, if I'm having a conversation with you, and what my primary thing is, and a part of the key in everything that you do is you've got to do your exploration before you even segue into any kind of presentation. And I never personally do a presentation on the first date. It's always about them. But part of multiple streams of income, and the acronym for that is SCALP, SCALP. Your speaking business. Now, even though I'm not really speaking because I've got a long tail on it. When you and I met, we had a speaking conversation. That's part of it, even though I'm not looking to monetize it right away. It's everything goes back to your strategy. So C is your coaching and consulting business. How you're going to monetize that. The business model I'm involved with, I've got a vested interest. That's a whole other piece. A is your affiliate income. Quite often there's a few affiliate, I've got a few affiliate income things. L is your leveraged resources. If you've got a course and you've got representatives of a course, that's a form of a leveraged resource. Or MLM is another form, and I know a lot of people have got the wrong perception of that. I get that, and that's okay, because they just don't understand it. But that is another L. And then the other, this P is your passive income. That's where you've got your money working to make more money. The reason I don't have to worry about making money anymore is because when I was making more money than I ever could imagine, I invested wisely into quality investments, and I've got a significant income. So the key, no matter what it is that you're doing, is your intention. And if you are clear on what you really want to accomplish, there are people around that can help you. It's just finding the people that are conscious, authentic, and teaming up with those people.
Yeah, with your commitment.
Yes.
I want to leave that part out. With your commitment, because nobody's going to help you if you're not committed. Period. That's my experience.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to help you if you're not committed. They're going to actually sideswipe and ignore you. So,
Yeah. And I said that a couple different times through this thing. They've got to be determined. They got to be
yeah,
committed, one way or the other. Are they serious and committed about being successful? If they're not,
yeah,
I'm not going to waste my time.
yeah, 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 yeah. I love that. I hope they're hearing the through line in the conversation for the last 45 minutes has been commitment, determination, value, right? So I hope they're hearing it. It's all the things that I teach. So you're just coming on here and confirming all the stuff. So I'm super excited for that. So Robert, this has been an honor to have you on the show. You've dropped so much wisdom. I myself am going to go back and re-listen to this conversation because you're the, I'm going to change your name. You're not only the networker, you're the acronym man. I'm gonna put Robert, the acronym man, Butwin. Where can people find you to make this connection? But knowing that even you mentor for free, it's really again intentional. So
Yeah. The best thing to do is have them contact you. You've got my calendar link. So that
yeah,
way I know they come from you. And,
okay,
yeah, that's the easiest way. And,
okay,
the key and part of the key in winning, I'll give you another one. Win what's important now as it relates to where
hmm
you're going. I mean, you know, there's many different acronyms, many different ways to create the success one way or the other. One of the key things, and I learned this from Jim Rohn again, if people believe the promise, they'll pay the price. Jim Rohn said, if you want to work smart in your job, but work hard on yourself. And if you improve your skill sets, and that was the promise that I believed when I started my journey, I realized I needed to change my mindset. It's like when I went to college, I got a degree. I didn't get the education. I got the education when I became an entrepreneur. So I had to change
yes,
my mindset. And so that's why they want to plug into somebody like yourself, Lorna,
yeah,
that got the wisdom that will help people based on your strategies, your methodologies, the things that you bring to the table, create the success that they deserve. And everybody deserves to be successful.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I love that. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And I love that you keep using the word deserve. I love that you keep using that word because so many people are walking around, male and female, thinking that they're not enough, and that not enoughness you can shift it right away by just believing that you deserve whatever you say you want, right? It's not a can I get it? It's not a question. You deserve it. It's your birthright. So go for it, right? So that is this has been such a joy, such a joy. So y'all, I see somebody still here listening to us. And thank you for being here. Those of you who have popped in and out of this conversation, this week's Success Code Fireside Chats has been fire. I'm telling you, go back and listen to this because Robert is an amazing, but he's subtle. He's subtle with his wisdom. He drops it and you don't really catch it. So you got to listen to it again so you can catch it, right? So thank you, Robert, for being here. This has been really great. And for those of you who are interested, I will drop the calendar link for Robert under this recording and like, share, and subscribe because this information that he's given us today is really eligible to be seen and heard by everybody. I don't care where you are in business. Even if you're in business and you're an eight-figure earner, you still get to know how to get into the room at your next level. There's always a level up that you get to level up, right, Robert? There's always a level up that you get to level up. So thank you all for being here. We're going to drop a couple of links for the books that he also suggested. By the way, if you're in my world, you always know that I recommend The Go Giver. That's one of the books that I read every year. And I actually use a story, Robert, about the fun as a strategy. You remember the story when I think the girl was Nicole. The guy went to visit Nicole and she had the room with the toys. Do you remember that story with the toys? And she said, the guy asked, well, why do you have the room of toys? And she said, it's because they got to release, they got to get creative. You got to have fun to be creative. So it was, in other words, it was what she was saying. So again, thank you for being here. Thank you all for watching. And I'll see you next week. Bye, y'all.